Ah, wah. I'm messing with things, don't mind me. OBS updated, so now I can view my stream health from OBS, which is cool. But I've lost my chat. So I don't know. We're gonna balance. We're gonna hope it balances out. I went into the YouTube viewer like I usually do, and I popped out the chat. So hopefully it's fine. I hope it's fine. God, I hope it works. I don't know. But hello. Welcome to Silly Stream Time. Plah. Get rid of here. Better. Welcome to Silly Stream Time, where I am. This is the first time of me doing something like this, I feel. I'm gonna be doing some Blender 101 shenanigans with, like, how to navigate workspace, what's interpolation, and stuff like that. I advertise over on Tumblr as well as in some friend discords about if you have any questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat. I will answer them as soon as I am able to. I'm gonna put some ground rules. We're not doing anything like super complicated this time around. This is like basic baby level stuff. I'm not going to be doing a full-on rigging tutorial. I'm sorry, I'm not that good yet with rigging. As much as I would love to, I am not going to be doing like rigging, weight painting, modeling, that sort of things. Even myself, I'm still learning how to do a lot of that stuff. The furthest I'll get is like, oh, how do you rip an asset from Destiny 2? Or like, how do you rip a shader? If people are curious about that, I can show my process is for that. But I'm not gonna do a full-on step-by-step guide because we'll be here for like 3 hours, and I do not have 3 hours to stream today. I plan on doing the basics, like helping show like these are workspaces that I spend most of my time in, some stuff to be really familiar with, and I also have some tools that hopefully should make it easier to follow along for people. I have a little like keyboard overlay thing so you can see my key presses, because Blender uses a shit ton of keybinds. Dear God, your keyboard is your best friend. Yeah, I think it'd be good to just sort of jump into it and start orienting the workspace. Boop, ta-da! And welcome to Blender. When you first open Blender, this is what you see. You get your new files, with some templates. Like, for example, here is like general. If you're someone who's gonna be messing around with Blender's 2D animation tool, which is Grease Pencil, they have stuff for that. I have not personally messed around with Grease Pencil, but it's really, really cool, and you can do some really neat stuff with it. If you're sculpting, you're messing with like video editing, there's also templates for those, and it also shows all your recent files here. You just click on the side to get out, and welcome to Cube, this poor abused cube that everyone deletes as soon as they enter Blender. But this is our friend, Cube. This weird pyramid thing is our camera, and then this is our light source. We are currently in a non-material view, which means we're not going to see any textures on this block. We're not going to see any lighting. This is this is the view that you would use for like modeling or keying animation, that sort of thing. So it's very basic, very easy, very simplistic, so it's very non-resource intensive. The way I'm moving around my workspace is I'm using the middle mouse button, and I'm just sort of clicking and dragging with the middle mouse button. If I want to pan, I can hold shift, click with the middle mouse, and then pull my screen up, down, left, right, so I can zoom around like this. Wow. And if I wanted to zoom in, all I gotta do, scroll with my mouse. Easy. So if I wanted to like zoom in here, ta-da! The cube. The cube. If we wanted to see what the camera is viewing, we'll go over here onto right underneath our little axis. There is a little camera button, and we can get a view of what the camera is currently seeing. So right now it's just looking at this cube. We can move this. I will show how to move it in a second. If we wanted to see the material of the cube, the top right corner, now we can see the cube's material. It doesn't look like much happened because this cube doesn't have any texture to it, but I swear to you, it does have a material now. We can see the material of the cube. And then if we wanted to see the actual lighting, we go over one more click, and there it's now shaded. Very fancy, very nice. So we're gonna go back. Oh, if you wanted to just view the wireframe, so everything in Blender, like everything made of 3D is made out of little points called vectors. And when you're sculpting, you have to sometimes adjust like certain vectors to make sure that everything looks right, or reconnect stuff so that way the material actually covers the thing. Because sometimes vectors forget to add faces and that sort of thing. You can go into this mode called wireframe mode, and that'll show you, instead of having like all the actual like faces and all the shape of it, you just see the edges and the vectors. So these corners have vectors on them, and then they are connected by edges, and then those edges form a face, and then you get the cool cube. There's still more to learn. We're still in the basics. Hang on, we'll get into actually moving stuff around in a second. But we're gonna click on the cube, and I'm going to go into edit mode to better show what I mean with those vectors. Ta-da! So as you see here, edit mode is where you go if you want to adjust the overall like shape of a 3D object. So we have a cube, and this cube has 8 vectors. These are these little points. You can click on them, and now comes the fun part of actually moving things around. So let's say I want to make, I don't know, these 2 parts I want to have upwards. So for starters, if I'm going to be moving both sides at once, one thing I like to do is to figure out like what orientation is going to be easiest for me to view it, and I use the axis to do that. So if I'm moving these like up, I will usually do like X. I'll press this little X button so I can view that. And there's a couple ways to select it. You can just scroll over here, click one, hold shift, click the other one, boom, both of them are selected. And then I'll go into my axis, and then I can adjust as need be there. Or I can angle it this way, and then move it, or I can even go into wireframe mode, and select it that way. There are plugins for you to select multiple vertices as well, but I'm gonna try my best to not use all my fancy plugins, because I know a lot of people usually don't have them. So now that we're in this view, and we have both of our things selected, to move things, you press the G button. Whoa! And now it's a shape. I don't know what you call this shape, but it's a shape. And then if we want to do this one as well, let's move this one like... This is a fucked up looking cube. Let's do that. Some weird shape going on. And yeah, all I'm doing is pressing G and just moving it around with my mouse to just make some weird shape. And then if I want to see what it looks like, I can just rotate with the middle mouse button. That's a fucked up looking cube right there. Now, I don't know if rotating is going to be very visible, but we could try. So to rotate, I'm going to click one of the vertices, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go over here to the left side, and this little circle like rotating thing. See if I can select multiple. There we go, now you can see some rotating action. So this is going to rotate depending on which orientation I'm looking at. So right now I'm looking straight at it from along the x-axis, so it's going to rotate along the x-axis. If I wanted to rotate on the y, I can do this. And if I want to rotate on the Z, I can do that. Or I can just use these. I can click and drag in the middle here, so it goes across all of them. This yellow, this greenish, very bright color is for the Y, the red is for the X, and the blue is for the Z. So I think it'd be cool to rotate it like this. Yeah. Yeah! It's a fucked up looking cube right there. Alright, and now we're gonna make this cube really big. So I'm going to go ahead and I can press A to select everything. I'm gonna scroll out, and then we're gonna do this little like double box thing right here. And I'm going to press, I can either press S to scale, and that's gonna scale everything. I can scale it along a specific axis using this tool, so like just like rotating, if I press the green, it's gonna go across the Y. If I press the blue, it's gonna go across the Z, and I'm currently along the red, which is the X-axis, so I'd have to rotate and then do that. Ta-da! So let's see. I don't want to make everything big. Make everything big, please. And then let's make them like flat. And smush you like that much. That's a fucked up looking cube. Alright. I don't think it'd be a good idea to go too in depth with each of these tools do, but these are really good for if you're sculpting using vertices. All these tools have their own little purpose and whatnot to make your thing work. As you can see, we fucked up this cube pretty good. I don't think this would make it for a really good animation, so I'm gonna go back into object mode. You can also do this in edit mode, whichever way. If you do this in edit mode, it's going to count them as like the same object, so you're going to be doing things in like one giant group compared to doing things separate, which is why I'm switching to object mode. I'm going to go into here, and we're gonna get rid of this cube. He's been through enough, so I'm just gonna click it and press the delete button. Oh no, I don't have a thing to animate with. Ah, shit. Oh no, whatever shall I do? We're gonna go Shift A, and we have a really, really cool menu here. So many things. So many goddamn things. Don't worry. This whole first section is all like shapes and texts and whatnot. Grease Pencil is your 2D animation tool. So if you want to do like gases, there's volume. If you want to add text, there's a texting. There's curves and surfaces, which are really good for if you want to map like a camera to a specific pathing. Like if you want to make like 3D turnarounds for your models and stuff, you'll do a Bezier or a circle. We're gonna focus on meshing, and we have our choice. We can either add a plane, which is just a little flat cube. It's just 4 vertices. We can bring our cube back. We got a circle. We got a UV sphere, an isosphere, a cylinder, a cone, and a donut. We also have a monkey. I always forget about the monkey. I will say this, speaking of donuts, this is relevant, I swear. There are so many fucking Blender guides out there that ask you to make donuts. You learn a lot through those tutorials. I never was able to absorb any of the information I would learn through there. They are very in-depth, and they're very hand-holdy, which is really good if you have no idea what you're doing. But if you're like me and you kind of have an idea what you're doing, your mind tunes out a lot of the information, and you're like, ah, fuck, I was supposed to be paying attention there, wasn't I? And yeah, but there are lots of really good Blender guides out there, so if this little like walkthrough tutorial about like Blender 101, it doesn't help, look up the Blender donut tutorial, and I guarantee you there are playlists upon playlists upon playlists for every single version of Blender of how to make a donut. And they also like go through lighting and texture work, and I don't think they rig, but they do particles as well. Which particles are another thing that I'm not going to be covering today. But I am going to add a sphere. And the sphere is a little chunky, but we can fix that. in object constraints, I believe. One of these menu. Nope, I was wrong. Where are you? Subdivision. Yeah, okay. So, let me get rid of that. Okay, so right now, we added a circle. Oh, a sphere. Wow, it's a sphere. Music is a little louder. Wow. Got a little sphere. And as you can see, we can very clearly kind of see these bumps on the sphere. The little flat, it looks a little bit like a golf ball. And as much as I love like Epcot ball, I would rather have very smooth. I want to be very smooth, very sleek and fancy for our little thing. So I'm gonna go into here, and in this little tab, this is where like I'm going to label this as the settings window. It's not what it's officially called, but literally every single time you need a setting for something, it's going to appear in here. 9 times out of 10 at least. So we're gonna look for this little, there's a, oh no, my head's covered, my big ass head's coming up. Hang on, look, right here, right where my mouse is, right there, that little blue, wrench, that's the word. The little blue wrench that's right there, yeah. We're gonna click on that, and we're gonna go to add modifier. I'll come back in a second, I swear. And we're gonna do subdivision service modifier. And wow, it's already so smooth, so much smoother, so fancy. And we can increase it. I'm gonna switch it to simple. Actually, no, we'll do that. I'm gonna do 4. 4 seems good. And what this is doing is it's sort of, I'm going to probably explain this wrong, but it's tricking the viewport into thinking that there's more vertices than there actually are. That is the easiest way I can explain what's going on here without being technically wrong. It's sort of adding in a bunch of extra stuff to smooth out the shape. So rather than having it be this like really chunky golf ball shape, now it's super smooth. Okay, I'm popping back in. We're back. Okay. But this is good because now if we go into edit mode, what? There's only the normal amount of vertices? That's so cool. But if you go into here, it's so smooth. Yeah. And now we have a really cool sphere. And we can do stuff with it. So you can even move stuff around in object mode, just like you can in edit mode. So I'm gonna go into here, I'm gonna press G and Swedish Woody. Here go here, not cubey, that's not a cube. But we can move it, we can scale it, we can rotate it. It's a sphere, so you're not really gonna see it rotate. And as always, if you want to undo things, you can just press Ctrl Z. Let's add a texture to this bad boy. Let's do that. So I'm gonna go into here into, oh fuck, you can't see it. Hang on, let me duck. There is a little like red and black sphere thing at the very, very bottom, right above the little checkerboard. That is your material tab. So if we go into here, we're gonna press the new material button, and we have all these settings. We're only going to care about a few of these settings, because if I went through and talked about every single one, not only would I get probably half of them wrong, we'd be here a while. So I'm just going to go into here. We're going to change the color. I think blue is a really, really cool color. Don't mind me. I've got to make sure I think. So here's some part that I'm making sure that I'm not doing wrong. I am about to open the shader editor, and here's a really, really cool thing that you can do with Blender that I have not seen really in any other program. At least the few animation programs that I've tried. If you go into here, where you hover into a corner, it could be this corner, it could be that corner, it could be the one down below, it could be the one over here, and you click and drag. Isn't that fucking cool? It's a little annoying sometimes when you're trying to just click on a thing and it's say you open up a new thing, but now it duplicated the window, and we're gonna go into the shader editor. Wowzer. Why are you not assigning? Why are you not assigning? This should be working. Hang on. Oh, you know what the issue is? I'm stupid. We're not looking at materials right now. That'd be the issue. Make sure that you go in the right view when you're trying to add materials. You kind of need to be able to view the material. So I clicked the little material view, and now it's blue. Wow. So this shader editor, if you ever want to get really fancy with your shaders and like applying multiple textures or making things glow in the dark and X, Y, and Z, you're probably going to be getting very, very familiar with the shader editor. It is very spaghetti-y, as in you will end up with a lot of nodes very, very fast when you're getting to learn how to do things. So do your best to stay organized. We're not going to get too fancy here. I'm just going to mess around with some of the settings really quick just to get some cool textures and whatnot going. So first things first, I want to make this ball glow in the dark. So I'm going to go into lighting, and we can't see anything at the moment because we don't have bloom activated. And I'm also going to go in, this is just me changing the world settings around. But we can see a little bit of glow. We can even go crazy with it. Let's make it like 25. Hwah! It's so fucking bright right now. This is emission that I am adjusting, so if I wanted to... Hang on, wait, you should probably... Yeah, there you go, now you can see it. If we go into here, let's make it probably like a little lower. There we go. Okay. So now we have it at like 2. And if we want, we can change this so it could be like reflective. So metallic's gonna like be a little bit more reflective. If we wanted to have a rougher texture, but I saw at roughness. So this is like super duper smooth and shiny, very rough and non-reflective. I think that it'd be cool to just have it kind of be glowy. I'm biased towards the glow. It looked very nice. So the bloom is located, hang on, I'll duck again. The bloom is located in render, and I'm rendering with Eevee right now, not cycles. There is a difference. And then the bloom right there. So now we can actually sort of like see our orb. And should have like a keybind where you just duck out of the way, just like hang on, hua, hua, and then back. You could also, there are so many goddamn nodes, and when you add plugins, those nodes add up really fucking fast. So like, if I shift A here, you could just, we're gonna just take a gander at all of this. There are so many things that you can mess around with. It all just sort of depends on like what kind of things you are looking for. Since this is just a very basic tutorial, I'm only going to be focusing on the colors. If we wanted to, we can add like an image texture as well, which there is a separate node for that. Where it's like image, you can even search like image texture right there, and you would like go into your files, look up the image texture, and then to add and adjust nodes, you would just click and drag here. Actually, it probably would make more sense to like click and drag, and then you would connect it that way. I'm not gonna connect it because I don't want to break anything. If you wanted to add normal textures, as in like files, image textures that add actual like roughness and texture to your model. I should stop saying texture so much. There's two different definitions for the same word. You would also, there are nodes for that. You can make textures that move, which are really fun. I was messing around with that recently for Cal's rig to make like the really fancy glowing moving awoken textures. I can open up its rig and show a little bit of the spaghetti behind that in a little bit. There is so much fucking spaghetti in his shader node for just the face texture, because it's based off of a different different base rig, and then I added the Destiny stuff on top of it, and good lord. Anyways, we have it. It's blue. It's neat. I'm gonna change it to like a deeper blue because I think that'd be nicer. And if we wanted to close out this window, we can just boop, click and drag until like a little arrow pops up and then it goes away. But I do want to have another window open for the next thing we're gonna do. So I'm gonna click and drag again in the corner. And this time I'm gonna go and I'm gonna press the camera button. And hang on, I'll duck out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna click on this camera, and now there is a new little tab where it's a little camera. We're gonna go in here, and I'm gonna go into viewport display, scroll down so you can see it, and I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that, the passepartout, this thing? Yeah, we're gonna crank that baby up. So now all that's in this window here is just the camera view. We don't have to worry about like the little gray edges and stuff because I only care about what's in frame at the moment. So I'm gonna also get rid of that real quick. And now I'm gonna take my camera and I'm gonna do Alt R, and that is gonna reset the rotation back to like what it would originally be. And then I'm gonna press Alt and G, and that brings us back to the origin point, the little crossroads between everything. So now I'm gonna go into a side view by pressing X. You can also press like when your numpad numbers. I don't have a numpad computer, a numpad connected to my computer, so unfortunately I can't do that. But the numbers do also like rotate you to these views. Hang on, I gotta take a second. My nose is running. My nose. A little sniffly boy. It's cold here. Okay. Nose has been properly sniffled. Yeah. And now back to what we were doing. Our camera is in our origin point. I'm going to rotate it so that way it's flatly looking at our sphere. That's our end goal here for what I'm doing right now. So I am going to press R, and let's do X90. And that rotates it along the X-axis exactly 90 degrees. We could also rotate it this way, but if you want exact numbers, you just press like R and then whatever degree out of 360 that you want. I think you can do past 360. Hang on, 5, ooh, no. R5. Oh yeah, you can do past 360. Cool. I didn't know you could do that. So if you really want to do an angle of 1000 something or other, you can do that. But I'm going to press G to move it. And we'll scroll, and we're going to move it out a little bit more. And you could also change the scale of your camera. It's not going to affect really unless you're changing the field of view. It's not going to affect the actual like viewpoint. Like, let's see if I make this camera really fucking big, you could tell it's not changing what the camera's seeing at all, because the camera's technically loading from this point. If you wanted to change the actual like oh god, the word! This thing, if you wanted to change the scaling of the camera, you would go into your render settings and adjust the resolution! That's the word I was looking for. Resolution. It's in the render settings, which is located like 2 tabs down. it's an output, and then the very top, format, and then resolution settings. You can change it to whatever you want. So, I think this is a good camera viewpoint. And we're not gonna worry about lighting all that much right now, so I'm just gonna kinda goodbye. And let's do a little animation. Let's do a little basic animation. So I am going to adjust this. I'm going to add another window. So this will help me keep track of making sure everything is in frame that needs to be in frame. It's going to look a little weird because the stream layout's a little weird. I prefer you guys to see my keybinds of every, like, actual end product. Yeah. Anyways, I like to keep animations in a non-material view. It just makes my computer run faster, in all honesty, especially when I have a lot of materials and a lot of moving parts and I'm trying to preview what the animation is going to look like. Having a non-material view really does help. Of course, I do lose the normal textures if I'm working with something that does have some normal textures, but it's fine most of the time. Then I'm going to go into this new window that I just made. I'm going to click on this little drop down. We're going to go to something called the dope sheet editor. That is under the animation, is the very first one. And this, my friends, is going to be your best friend when it comes to animation. You can animate on just the timeline. I don't recommend it. The timeline is kind of just there as a reference point to see where in your animation you are. If you want to adjust the specific keyframes for every part of your model or your object or whatever, you're gonna want to do it through like the dope sheet. So for instance, if let's move this out of frame, and I want to make a singular keyframe. So I'm gonna go in here. There's this little button behind the goose's head. Hang on, goose. We're gonna press this. This is auto keying. This is something I have on basically all the fucking time. Instead of having to go in and make a keyframe for every single time you move anything in your object, you can just press auto key. And what Blender will do is it will, like, if you so much as slightly move a object or a bone by a degree, it'll make a frame for that. It'll add a keyframe, which is so nice. You could also turn this off and do, I think it's Control I? No, I was wrong. It's just I button. I button will add your keyframe. So right now, if I wanted to only record the location, I can do that. I can only record the rotation, the scale. I could do all deltas, visual scale, or if this was an armature, I could even do everything. I'm just going to focus on auto keying for now. I'm going to add this rotation, location, and scale. And now you can get a better explanation as to why the dope sheet is your best friend. So this, to help navigate, it gives you a little drop down. We are in the sphere object, and it's telling us that there is a object transform, which means that we either rotated it, we moved it, or we scaled it at this keyframe. If we were working with an armature, they would have like the name of the armature here, and then what bone it is in, and X, Y, and Z, and it would specify down from there. Because we're not working in an armature, I'm not going to get too specific with that, but I can open up another animation later to show what I mean a little bit better. Versus if we look at our timeline here, all we have is a singular keyframe. Let me see if we can move this. Timeline. That's not the timeline, that's the dope sheet. But, move it up here. Right here. Oh, that's all the timeline shows us, which is fine. But I would like to see what it is that I'm moving. It doesn't really give us a lot of information about that. So that's why I prefer working with the dope sheet and then using our timeline sort of as a reference point. Um, we are going to make a little bouncing ball animation because I feel like that's a really good starting point for animation in general. I'm going to go in and I'm going to set our keyframes, our max frame, sorry. Let's set it to 50 for now. I don't think it's going to take 50 frames. I think it's going to take far less than 50 frames, but let's just do that. So in our little timeline here, hang on, I'll duck out of the way. What I did is I went in to end and I typed in 50, and that changes the amount of frames that this animation is going to have. So if we wanted to make it like 1,000 frames, we could just put in 1,000. You can even change our start frame. So instead of starting from frame 1, we can change the start frame to, I don't know, 25, and it'll start at the 25th frame in the animation, which is really good for if you're working on an animation that has audio. You can, like, and you're working on something in chunks, rather than having to play it from the beginning every single time, or trying to find out the timing of something. You can just set it to the section that you're having trouble with, and then work from there. Hang on. Drink break. My throat. Wah. I got LaCroix. It tastes like watered down Sprite. But our goal for this little animation is to have a little bouncy ball. So I'm gonna have it bounce and be like boop boop boop. And I think it'd be cool to have like a little bit of squash and stretch with it too. I'm gonna put another disclaimer out here right now, because I could feel the Blender people crying at the screen. Yes, I know this can be done with particles and physics, and you can just add weight and it will do all that for you. I don't want to. I don't want to do that. There is physics engines in Blender, and it's actually really cool messing around with the physics engine. And you can also mess with particles, where you can add multiple balls, and it will just spew them all out like someone dumped a bucket of Legos on the ground. We're not going to be doing that in this tutorial. That is a lot. And this is not that tutorial. This is getting familiar with Blender and physics are, oh boy. But we're gonna have it bounce across the screen, and we're gonna start out by adding our keyframes. So just like in normal animation, you want to break down the most important frames for your animation. So these, in our case, are going to be when it enters, the bounce down, so the squat, when it flattens out like a little pancake, when it stretches up, arches, stretches down, and it flattens out again. So I'm going to start with something important, and that is interpolation. And this is my best friend in animation. So interpolation and easing, these basically just say, how would you like us to handle tweening? So in 2D animation, normally what you would do with your tweens is you would draw all the keyframes, and then you would figure out from there, okay, how many in-between frames do I want to have? Interpolation, this is interpolation. It's how quickly do I want to go from A to B? How smoothly do I want to go from A to B? Do I want it to be a very fast transition? Do I want it to be a very slow transition? Do I want to be like slow at the beginning and slow at the end and fast in the middle? Do I want to have a smear, etc., etc.? At the moment, because we are just in the keying step, we are going to set our interpolation to constant. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell Blender, hey, fuck your tweening, I just want to focus on the keyframes right now. We'll worry about tweening later. So we will go in and... oh, excuse me. Set it to constant, and now we can start moving our things around. So I'm going to move this ball so it's just in frame, and then you can move it so that way you're doing it like right back to back to back, and then move the frames out from there. You can estimate. I like to do it sometimes back to back to back, just so I can just flip through using my arrow keys to figure out if I like the keyframes or not. Unless I specifically know the timing of something, this is what I tend to do. if I do know the timing of something, then I will match it to like, oh, I know this is going to be hitting on frame 15 or this is going to be hitting on like frame 50. Then I will move it around as need be. So we're gonna go into here and we're gonna boop. I'm gonna use this. It's very faint. You can see this little red. This is our floor. This is gonna be our floor for the animation. Which means I probably have to move the camera back, but we will cross that bridge in a second. And then we're gonna bounce it up. And then we'll put it like right here. And then we'll arch it down. Flatten it out. And this is gonna be like a slightly smaller arch. And we'll get him like off screen there. So I'm gonna make sure that these are all set to constant at the moment by selecting them all and then setting it to constant, and I can see there are little green lines connecting all of these, so that way it is using the same interpolation. So this is sort of our little animation right now. Bam, bam. Whee! Now, if we wanted to, I'm going to move these out. Say like 5 frames sounds good. And we'll make it so that way it hangs in the air a little bit. So there, and then this is like what, 2 frames of airtime-ish? 1, 2. Yeah. I'll make it 3. That sounds cool. And all I'm doing here, by the way, is just select, click, move. That's all I'm doing. So there, and then this is another, it's gonna flatten out, so it's gonna be a little bit faster. And then it's going to go up, and then the arch. And it's gonna hang in the air a little bit. And I'm going to change the frames to like 30, since this is not going to be a very long animation. But if we wanted to play this animation, we can either press the little play button that's down here on the timeline, or we can press the spacebar. Ta-da! Wow! We're animated the thing! Good, clap, clap! Ah! Many claps! Ah! You look at my little paw in the air! Wah! We animated the thing! We can do better. So, as you can see, he's got a little bounce. And because we are using constant, we aren't really caring about the tweening at all. So we just have the keyframes. And if we wanted to, we can make this all smoother. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change it to Bezier, which is going to add that tweening that makes everything look a little bit smoother and less choppy. And already, you're gonna see big difference. And I can already see like an issue where this ball is sort of hanging in the air, like a wee bit too long. So I'm gonna shrink this down just a wee bit. And I'm sort of like mapping out the arch in my mind as I'm looking at it over and over. And I think we need to either move this bounce. Yeah. We're gonna move this, because this sort of there, and then we need to move this over like that. So that flows a little bit better. But this means we also need to go back and adjust things. So, bam. And we're gonna follow this sort of arch. So, notice how it's like going down like this. It swoops. And then it starts dropping down straight down right away. And we don't want that. So we're gonna move this over as well. And then scoot that over. So now it should be... That's a little... This is fine, and then this is a little too far. So you can move that back. one thing I'm also doing is using the grid to my advantage. So that's sort of between watching the actual like curve and then seeing like where is the ball gonna go next. I can use the grid of this viewport to sort of map out like, okay, I need to move this by like a cube over or 2 cubes over. It's a really good reference point to just look at the grid and see what it is, like where exactly you are moving to. So there, and then this I think drops too far. So I'm gonna, because right now it's in like sort of this area, and then we watch it and it goes like hua. And I don't know why it's going like that. It shouldn't. There. And then we're gonna scoot that over just like a smidgen. I think I actually may have an easier time doing this. So we have boing, bonk, and now we need to make it have like another little arch. And this is a little too far off screen. It's doing the thing again. So where are we goofing up here? So it's arching and then it goes like here. We had this arch is like 2 cubes-ish away there, and now it's down to 1, and we don't want that. We want it to be closer to 2 to sort of match that arch. So we're gonna scoot this over. We're gonna scoot these over. And now it's like freaking out. It's like, oh god, what the fuck? What are you doing to me? This is normal, don't worry. This is animation. And we're gonna scoot that over that way. Arch, and then... yeah, I like that. And we can sort of send it flying off screen that way. We're just gonna add like a random frame here, just to make sure it's off. Boing, boing. There we go. So that looks a lot smoother now. This is the wonders of... this is the wonders of 3D animation, where you key it out and then you add the tween and you're like, ah, wait, hang on, that doesn't look right. So, from here, what can we do to improve this? So we got this little bouncing ball, and right off the bat, it already looks pretty good. You know, this little part here towards the end is a little shaky, but it's fine. What you can do is add some squash and stretch, which is a principle of animation that basically just means we're gonna take it and we're gonna smoosh it, and whenever it's sort of adding a bit of weight to your animation. So if you ever watch like animation reels from animation students, you'll often see like a flour sack. That is a really good way of practicing adding weight. So instead of just imagining like, how does a thing move? You think, is the flour sack, if you drop it on the ground, how is the flour sack gonna look? So we have our little bouncy ball. And if you've ever like watched a ball in slow motion, you'll know that when it's colliding with a thing, it's gonna smoosh down. And that smooshing is part of the sort of squash and stretch. So right now, we have this, and it's moving really fast here, and it's going to collide with the ground on this frame. So right off the bat, what we can do is we can add a little bit of smush So I'm gonna smoosh this down this way. Whop. And Blender already adds the smooshing for me, but we can see it's smooshing in midair, like it's flattening out here, which it's not supposed to do that. So I know that when it smooshes, it's going to smoosh against the ground, not in midair. So I can do a few things. One thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to rotate it to trick our eyes into thinking of this as a sort of smear blurring effect, where the physics of it are like moving so fast that it's just becoming a blur. And then I'm also going to change the scale. That's not the right thing. Blah. Blah. I can rotate where, ooh, we're gonna round it back out. If I can remember what axis I did the thing on. Hang on. Wah, yeah. We're gonna round it back out. So we can also do this. I think it makes more sense to just have it rotate. So I'm gonna rotate this. So it's still kind of doing this thing, but we can also Alt-R. Oops, not Alt-R, Alt-S changes the scale. So we can wait until, like, so this is gonna hit on frame 5. We can do this. There we go. Wow. It's a little tweaking, but bling! We can already see it. It looks so much more springy than this, like, sort of flat bounce it had going on here. Bling! And we can send this rotating off this way to add to that elasticity. And if we wanted to, we can even add, like, a little bit of opposite, where it's stretching upwards and then it stretches back down again. So we're gonna go into here. It flattens out here, but we're not gonna be as intense with the flattening at this one because it's sort of, this is the, like, secondary bounce, so it lost a lot of its initial momentum in that first bounce. So it's still gonna be a little bit flat, but it's not gonna be as silly. Let's see. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna do some tweaking here. So just like before, we're gonna rotate, I think, like here. And I'm gonna lower the intensity of the stretch a little bit, so it's just like a little subtle stretch. And doesn't really smush out all that much beforehand, but we can still rotate it so that way it's like tricking our eyes a little bit here. There we go. It's like a little blue blob. A little bloop bloop. So already it's looking so much fucking better compared to when we were just doing some basic constant keyframing. Blink. We can even, if we really wanted to get really silly with it, we can even go into here. And let's say I want to make this arch be really, really long. So there's a couple things I can do. I can go into here and I can just move my keyframes over. So now it's stretched out a little bit that way. Or, and this is the way I would recommend that you do this instead, we're gonna go into here and we're gonna select these two frames, which this connects this frame to this frame and this frame to that frame. So we are gonna go into here, we're gonna go into interpolation, and let's make the easing, like, let's be really silly with it. So this is a sine curve. So it's going to, so if you look at how the sine curve is shaped, it's going to spend a lot of time closer to that initial frame, and at the very, very end, it's going to whoop, and it's going to switch right away to that next frame. So I think actually cubic might be a little bit smoother, so it's not as choppy, but just to show what it looks like, you could see it's sort of like a little funky when you do it this way, but you can adjust the tweening by like moving the things out this way. Let's say I wanted to make it so that way this way. I spend most of the time getting to that. I spend most of the time closer to the second frame rather than the first frame. So I will go in here and I'll do ease out, which means that it's going to really quickly get to that next position and it's going to sort of slow down as it reaches that position. Same here, I'm going to do the opposite this time around, where we're going to do ease in. So spending a lot of time up in the air and then zooming back down. And yeah. I think our little bouncy ball looked fine as it is though, so we're going to keep it like this. But just that's just some of the things you can do. And there's also there's Bezier. You can also have it bounce a little bit. So let's say if you just had like a few frames, you could do it sort of like, I'm picturing this in my mind as like Roadrunner, where like, you know, when Roadrunner sort of runs into frames and he just kind of bounces back and forth, like, so like you hit like the little door stopper thing. Yeah, that's sort of what like back and bounce and elastic do, where it's going to like, it'll get you to the frame, but it's also going to wiggle back and forth around that frame to get the motions different. Linear is really, really good for camera movements. I don't think I've ever used linear for anything that wasn't a camera, I'll be totally honest with you, because it's going to move something in the straight line, in the straightest path it possibly can. So if I ever like I'm taking my camera and I want to try and pan it from like across the screen from like left to right, I will usually use linear and just put two frames, point A and point B, and just set it to linear and just have it move that way. This way it also won't add any easing, so you're not gonna have to worry about like it slowly starting to move and then moving faster in the middle and it's slowly easy again. Linear doesn't do that. It just point A to point B, move please, thank. So right now, we have a little bouncing ball. I want to add some lighting to the scene because lighting is cool. So I'm gonna go into here in our little camera. Now this ball already glows, which is pretty cool on its own, but we do still need some lighting in the scene. So I'm gonna go in here. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a quick plane, whop. And I'm going to add quick material so that it's you get something to reflect off of. And now we're gonna go Shift A again, add, let's do a sun. Hey, you can see the floor. So the light. So we have a little sun here. The sun is going to illuminate your entire scene. It's not illuminating from a specific point, it's the sun. It's from everywhere. If we wanted to do a specific point, we go and we add a point light. I should probably duck down for this, hang on. So we have our point light, we have a sunlight, and we have a spotlight, and we also have an area light. An area is going to be either a cube, I think you can set it to a specific shape as well. It's sort of like a more specific spotlight in my experience. But they both sort of serve the same thing. A spotlight you can have a little bit more control with how the light diffuses compared to an area light. An area light's sort of like the mix between a point light and a spotlight, but yeah. I'm gonna use the spotlight so you can sort of see lighting stuff better, and I'm gonna move things around. So I'm gonna move this up, and we're gonna add, see if we can get this like centered to our camera. And then I need to make sure I can actually see it. So let's up the intensity. I don't know, 50 something or other. That's way too bright. It's still too bright. I'm gonna be honest. Don't look at me for lighting tips. I still guess my way through half of this shit. But what I'm doing here is I am adjusting the power level, which is sort of like our intensity of the light, and I'm also going to go in so see if I can tweak this to be a little softer. There we go. And if we wanted to add a color, we can. Let's make it, fuck it, let's make it red. Let's make this like a lightish red. See what happens. Actually, I think white's fine. So we can go in here, and there's different color settings. You can use RGB. If you know the hex, which I do, it's no F. There you go. FFFFFFF, whatever is white, or just FFF if your computer sometimes allows the shortcuts. It depends on the program. 0000 0. How spam it with zeros, you get the black, or 000. And then RGB, you think of RGB. So hex, if you wanted to do red, it's FF00000. No, 4 zeros. Green is 00FF00, and blue is 0000FF. I hate that I know those. But we have our little light. And because it's a spotlight, what I've done here is I've changed the overall radius of it. So now we have this like nice, really wide spotlight. Hang on. There you go, you can sort of see it. The little ring circle there. So it's a lot softer if I wanted to, and I've also changed the blend. So this is a nice hard light. This is nice soft light. And this is not adding keyframes, by the way, at all. This is just changing the light settings. If you wanted to add keyframes to your light, you'd have to go in and adjust them, like every frame that you wanted to do that. I don't believe Blender auto keys lighting. It might auto key texture lighting, because I have done that before, where for like moving textures, it might do that. If we change this, we can change it. Let's say like I'm looking at this animation and I'm like thinking, maybe a spotlight's not like the best here. I could do a point light. And so now it covers like a much larger area. It keeps the settings as close as possible. So we still have like, it's nice and softer around the edges. It's still white. It has about the same intensity as it did before. It's now just coming from one point rather than in the sort of cone shape. And if we wanted to have an area light, like I mentioned before, an area light sort of the combination between a spotlight and a point light. So we can have that. And then we can also have a sun. This is really fucking intense sunlight. It's like 2000 right now. Your sun should only be at like 5. Don't put your sun at like over 10 unless you are looking for very intense lighting. Suns are very intense. So I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna keep our spotlight. I do like the spotlight a lot. I can also add additional lighting. So if I wanted to, I could do Shift A and add another light. I can also Shift D and move And that gives us another spotlight. Mwahaha. So I'm gonna... I think it'd be cool to do this, where we have like different spotlights and then we lower the intensity. So let's do like 1,000. No, maybe more like 500. We can go lower. We can go lower. And then we'll do, zoom out a little bit more. We're gonna do Shift D again. I'm just gonna keep it in the same spot this time, and then we're just gonna move it back. And I'm also gonna shrink this. And I'm also gonna shrink that. And we're gonna shrink this as well. So now we got like a little bit of depth going. Hey yo, that looks cool. We need this to be brighter. We got some depth going here. Look at that. That's pretty neat. But we can have that as our little backdrop for a little bouncing ball. And I think that that looks really cool. So, what else can we do? What else can we do to this scene? If we wanted to be really silly, we could add particles to it. I'm not gonna get too crazy here. I think this is good enough. So we're going to our output settings. I gotta duck down for a sec. I'm gonna do this so you can actually see all our output settings here. So this is where you would go to adjust like the resolution. So if you wanted it to be landscape instead of portrait instead of landscape, or you want it to be like for a specific screen, or you want it to be super high quality, you would go between these two tabs. So you could go into output and render settings. I have to turn on bloom because we turned that off earlier. So our little ball is glowing. There's also motion blur. So while you're in the animation, instead of it be rendering all the frames, it's going to start to blur them together. I usually keep this off because I don't make a lot of animations that are very intense, that require motion blur, or if I do, I just use a smear frame. Smear frames are my beloved. I love them so much. They're so silly. Anyways, if you were having trouble viewing things in your viewport, like up to frame, like you're playing your animation back and it just is not getting up to whatever frame, you can also simplify things in the viewport. So it'll limit the amount of subdivisions, which are the like how many vertices appear. It'll limit the amount of particles, that sort of thing. I'm going to render this in Eevee because cycles takes too fucking long. I'm not gonna explain the difference between cycles and Eevee, partially because I don't understand it myself. If you're making very easy animations, very simple ones, just use Eevee. Just use Eevee. Unless you're looking for something super high quality, high resolution, I don't really see much of a difference between Eevee and cycles when it comes to rendering. It's the way I think of it is cycles for if you want really high quality, good lighting stuff. Like if you want something to be really realistic, use cycles. If you're just making a silly little animation, just use Eevee. It'll be faster. It's gonna look a little bit less realistic, but it's fine. I could hear the cycles people like clawing at my door, like, no, use cycles, so I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to make sure the resolution settings are correct. Yep, I have. We only got like 30 frames of animation here to work with. We're rendering it at 24 frames per second. You can change it to like 30, 60, whatever. Just know that the more frames, the longer it's going to take to render. And it can already take a bit to render. Make sure everything's okay in my scene. Render settings. Oh, where's the output? There's an output somewhere. There we go. So if you want, you can render things. This is really nice for if you're rendering something that has a lot to a scene. If your animation, you're trying to render it, and you have like 500 frames and it's just taking way too long to render the whole thing, you can render it in chunks. And if ever you're worried about your rendering crashing and you having to start up from the beginning, what you do is you render it as images. and you take those images and you'll put them in a folder, and that way, and Blender does have tools in place to take all the images in those folders and turn them into the animation that you were looking at before. Which this is really, really good for if you're rendering a big animation and it crashes partway through. So instead of having to render the whole thing from the beginning again, you could just start out of what was the image last rendered. Oh, it was frame, I don't know, 200 something. Okay, start at frame 200 and try again. So here you can change it from all types of image formats. There's plugins to also change it to things that aren't listed here. I'm going to change it to an AVI, a JPEG. If you wanted to do like a .mp4 or a .mvk or whatever .movie file, whatever thing you would do FFmpeg video and adjust the setting from here. I'm just going to render it as an AVI. It's a chunky file, but it will get the job done. We're going to change our output by clicking on this. You guys can't see this pop up because thank you, Blender, for keeping my things secure. But I'm going to render it to let's do videos into this folder, sure, and it's going to render to that place, and we have our RGB. We're gonna make the quality high. And that should be good. Yeah. So now, if we want to render this thing, do render, and we can either render a specific frame. So if, let's say I was doing that render the entire thing through images, and I was like, oh, well, only this frame is fucked up. I could just go to that frame and render that frame as an image and then save it that way. Or we can go into render animation, which is what we're going to do now. And again, you can't see it, but what Blender's doing right now is it's running through the animation and it's saving every individual frame so it can then combine them all into one big thing. And then it'll show you on the top corner like what frame it's on. Right now it just finished. So if I find it in my files, hang on, we gotta dig around for it. It's an image source. Somewhere in here. Uh-oh. Why did you... Okay, this is the part that I always forget to do. I have to render it again because you need to make sure that you actually save it after it finishes rendering. Don't be me. I'm grabbing you by the shoulders here. Don't be me. Remember to actually save your shit after you render it. I've done this so many times. Banging my fucking head against my desk here. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to press image and then I'm going to press save. You can't see it because my thing is blocking the thing, but it's going to... It is in here! You lied to me! It lied to me. Never mind. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing all the time. Things don't lie to me. Never in my life has my own animation software lied to me about things not being properly saved. Not at all. Hang on. Window capture. Oh god. Yeah! It showed the right thing! Here's our animation! Woo! Look at it go! I added motion blur to this, so you can actually see in, like, oh god, can I not do individual hertz? No? Okay. But you can see here, you know how in our animation in this frame, it was just sort of this, like, oval shape? The motion blur actually adds the blur so that it's like, whwa! It's so blobby. I love it. Look at him. Boing, boing, boing. We made an animation. Yippee! And that, we can save our file by doing like Control S, or you can do drop down save. I'm not gonna save this. Unless people really want this little bouncy ball animation, I'm not gonna save this file. But, You can also import animations. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Hang on. Where is a good place I can save this? Blender 101. Wow. I forgot I had like 50 different sculpt practice files in here. So right now our animation's saved. Cool. I'm gonna go into here. Gonna do File, New, General, and we're back to square one. Don't be intimidated by this. Get out of here. Cube and light and all that, get out of here. Click and drag, delete that shit. So, I want to bring my bouncing ball into this animation here, because I really like that thing. So I'm gonna go in, and we're gonna do import. Well, actually append, sorry. You can either do append or you can link it directly. So if you link it, it's going to, whenever you affect the file, it's going to change, versus appending is just adding on from that file. But I'm gonna go into here. Can I change this window capture? There we go. Now you can sort of see my stuff. So we're gonna go into here. We're gonna go into collection. And this is the folder that has all the stuff that we added. So I'm going to append. It's back! And so is the animation. Wow! So if you were working on an animation in a different file and then you went back and you're like, actually, I want to add this to here, that's how you do it. You can also import stuff. So right now this is usually what if I want to import something from like a video game or a RIP or something like that, I'll go in through import. I can also link directly. So instead of just adding onto the existing file, I can just link stuff that way. I have to sneeze. Give me a second. My nose is buffering. I have eaten the sneeze. I've beaten it. Haha! My superpower strikes again. But yeah, now we have it's a brand new file. We just got our little animation in there. It's already in there. If you wanted to get really fancy with it, you could go into these tabs here. I'm telling you now, very rarely do I ever step outside the layout tab unless I'm specifically modeling something or I'm messing with compositing. I never touch any of these other tabs. It's one of those, if your project demands it, you'll probably end up using it, but most of the time you're not gonna end up touching these. UV editing is for if you have a image that is being applied to a shape in a very specific way, you will go in there and you'll edit, like, where does the vertice lay over the image? Excuse me. And you'll mess with that in the UV editor. Sculpting, modeling, those are, if you're going to sculpt a thing, obviously, they have specific tools in there that are different than the editor. Here we go. So you have like edit mode, sculpting, and stuff like that. Let me see if I can find a file. Don't save. Get out of here. Ignore this weird-ass face that you're about to see. This is just so I could show you all the things, all the different tools. There we go. So this is a failed sculpt. As you can tell, I never got back to it because face sculpting hard. But it has all these really, really cool tools that you can go in here, and you can do things like, let's inflate, and now I'm drawing little squiggles on this guy's face, and you can add blobs. So he's got little weird cheek things now. There's tools to mess with like the smoothness and making ridges and that sort of thing. Whoa. If you wanted to, where's something that I can, where's Cal's rig? You know what, let me point out some cool stuff using Cal. Where are you, bud? There we go. So this is my file from when I was rendering Cal, as his final rig. It takes a second because there's so much shit on his thing. So right now, he does have an armature. It's hidden, and I can either go in here and I can press this little I button to either hide it or show it. And you'll see he's got all these little lines all over him. This is his armature. This is how he moves around. So one view that we haven't seen yet is pose mode, and pose mode is how you move around your bones when you have an armature. So I'm going to click on the really skinny stick. You can go in and change. When you normally add an armature, you're gonna get these weird like diamond-like shapes. His rig in particular just uses sticks because there's so many. There's so many. But just like going into edit mode or object mode, we go into click onto here, and there's now a new thing called pose mode. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to move his little head around, I'll click on whatever bone I want to do. So this is his little head bone, and I can just wobble, 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 wobble. Or I can just open his mouth. I can make him smile. A big old derpy smiles. I can make him frown. These are all pre-weighted. His head uses a plugin called HumanGen. It's expensive, but dear God, is it worth it if it means I don't have to rig shit. His face can do weird swishy stuff. Look at this weird shit that it can do. But just like messing around with objects and stuff, you can go in, you can do like the auto keying and move around things per frame, so it'll automatically register as I'm moving this around in the dope sheet. Oh, you've moved this bone to this position. Got you, homie. If I wanted to just reset everything, I just select everything, and same way we reset the camera, Alt R, Alt G, ta-da! And now he's all reset, and he's back to his default stance. I'm not gonna get too crazy with things like how to set up bones and stuff like that, because it could also go into setting up inverse kinematics, and I fucking hate those. I will say, one difference that you'll see right now between Cal and probably many other Blender rigs out there is Cal's rig does not use control bones. Control bones in Blender are like little shortcuts. So instead of, let's say I wanted to move his hand up, and because he doesn't have any control bones, that means I will have to move this bone, and this bone. With a control bone, what I can do instead is, oh, well, I added a controller to this bone, so when I move this up, it's going to move the rest of the arm up like this. So this is actually using inverse kinematics, but control bones you'll often see have a, usually a lot of people use like rings, or they'll add an orb. Hang on, wait, I got a good rig for this. Hang on, where is it? Oh, Crow, where are you? Actually, hang on. DT ripping. Where are you? Squinting. Where the fuck? Where the fuck are you? There we go. Wait, no, that's not the right one. Player skeletons. Here we go. There we go. So this is the... I think it's community made. If not, it was ripped from Destiny. But this is a rig that all you have to do is add stuff to it, basically. And it is fully weighted. Here are what control bones look like. So instead of having, like, there are invisible bones here that nobody can see, you have a box. And this box moves. And you can also move this wrist around. You're supposed to be able to move that wrist around. You can twist the body using this way, and it'll move the rest of the objects with it. There's this fucking spaghetti of a head, where instead of having to move all these bones, you just do this. And there's nothing wrong with control bones. I personally just despise them, because I find them very hard to control. The music picked up at the best time for this. Okay, this is where I get a little ranty here, and this is solely a pet peeve of mine. Please do not take this the wrong way if you use control bones. They're actually very useful when used properly and you set up them properly. I have such a hard time setting up control bones to work properly and making them look how they're supposed to look and work properly, and they drive me up the wall. So I've since given up on setting up control bones and I just use the bones as they are. And if I need something specific, I'll use inverse kinematics to like make it easier to move his little feetsies around and that sort of thing. Because it is easier. You get a lot more control having your bones like this than using a controller. If you... Ugh. Don't mind me. I will ramble for days about how much I don't like controller bones. But yeah, I get a lot more usage out of bones being like this, and plus I can get more specified movements for like, instead of having a controller bone for his entire leg, I can just, oh, well, I just want to do this. Whack! And I can do that. You can't when you have controller bones, you would have to re-break the rig in order to get it to do that the way you want it. And you can't, I don't know. It's weird. I'm trying to think what other cool things can I show before we go? 'Cause I'm kind of running out of time here. Oh, I was gonna show the spaghetti. It was fucking... Okay, hang on. Let me go into object mode. Let me show you the spaghetti that I dealt with. So, brace yourselves here. This is his head. This is what I meant earlier when I said that it gets very spaghetti. This is normal. At least for my rigs, it's normal. I've seen some worse ones. His armor is a lot simpler, but that's because it uses a pre-made shader. These are... Oh boy. So this is using human gen stuff. So 90% of this is human gen. Like, the stuff that I'm currently circling my mouse around is all from human gen. This little stuff from... There was a model rip of Crow that I yoinked his face glow and stuff off of to therefore put onto Cal to therefore combine with human gen to get his little face glow. So these are textures of the awoken glow, like the little rippling awoken glow light that you'll see. So these are both the glow, and it's essentially mapping it so that way it says move when animations start, move thing, and then I added the emission so that his actual like lace face pattern design thing glows as well. Add a bunch of mix shaders so that way it looks right, and then the material output is just gonna be, oh, put this on the character. I don't care what your best do, just slap it on there. If I wanted to go back and change his skin texture, all the way over here is his skin texture. So this is the actual, like, the blue skin of Cal. I actually kind of want to show his skin texture because it looks very cursed. I can't remember what folder it's in. Hang on, maybe I can dig it out in here. There we go. Yeah. This is what his skin texture looks like, by the way. It looks funky because of how the vectors are mapped onto his face. So it looks... Yeah. Usually human heads look like that. If you wanted to do something like Lester here, where it's a not so rounded object. Let's see, image editor. Where are you? I think it's... Okay, so it's on the true north. I think it's diffuse. Oh, I can barely see that. What about a cloak? Oh, here we go. DMT. So his gun has this really lovely texture to it. This is about what it looks like in its textured form. So blood textures can get really weird, and this is broken down into a couple different things because of how Destiny does their texture work. So this does the diffuse, which is the base of it. You have your normal map, which tells Blender, hey, add these ridges where, and usually this is done in a very purpley color. I don't know why it's always purple, but it's very purpley. And then the gear stack affects the G stack affects where to put the colors of things. So if his gun isn't shaded right now, but his armor is, for example. And so I went through and I added the Burmish Streams shader. And so the G stack, what that does is it says, oh, Blender, add this color to these spots, please and thank. And Blender's like, no worry, homie, I got you. Let's see, what else can I show off? Fun little tidbit. Lester, I cheated with him. These aren't attached to his model because his shell uses all the same textures, and I didn't want to redo it. So these are just image files connected, and I added whoa. Hello? Edit mode, please. I want to show. There we go. So I just added a couple extra vertices by subdividing it, which subdividing just basically says, okay, so you selected these 2 points, add another point in between them. And I just, yeah. This is not the way you're supposed to do it. I cheated a little bit here. I've cheated a lot in a lot of this stuff. There's this cool texture though that you can add. Oh, that's right. You can add layers. Hang on. Where's something you can show layers to? Yeah. So his hair, Cal here, HumanGen adds particles for the hair, and if you wanted to, you could go in and change the hair textures, in the color and stuff like that. So instead of just having one layer, only one image, set of images or whatever, or one spaghetti node thing, you can have multiple, and it's really confusing, really fast. Oh boy. I've simplified his hair to use the very similar style to what Destiny uses. So this entire hair was made by me. I hated doing it, but you know what? It looks good on him. Trying to think of other things to show in Blender, because a lot of what I've learned in Blender has been done by me just chucking myself at projects and oh, I need to do this thing, but I have no fucking clue of how to do this thing, so I'm just gonna do a project and I will learn how to do this thing as a result. I could just show off really quick why I animate in non-textured mode. So this is a test animation I did of Reaper, and I'm not going to play the audio because I don't want YouTube to yell at me, but if I were to play it, I forgot that the playback is... Okay. So if I were to play this with the image textures on it, my computer would not be able to handle the 24 frames a second, but as I scroll through here, hang on, I'll do this. Yeah, so I don't have to worry about getting yelled at by YouTube. But so go back. So right now it's still sort of dropping frames on occasion, but for the most part it could stay up to 24 frames a second. If I go to here, oops, don't look at that, 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 don't look at that. Shh, shh, it's fine. This happens every time with this rig. Don't worry about it. This happens every time. This is a separate, non-related issue. Everything's fine. Don't look, don't look. Stream, don't look. Don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look. He's fine. Oh god, never mind, I guess. Reaper, where the fuck is your image textures? Are you gonna cooperate with me? Don't mind my program, it's just slightly crashing. Give it a second. This is normal. So, to explain what the fuck's going on here, I don't know why this happens. I'm still trying to figure out why the fuck it happens a lot. But essentially, this missing textures is Blender freaking out and saying, oh god, where is this man's image texture? I don't know where it is. I have linked this texture so many goddamn times. So there's no reason why it says it shouldn't find the image texture. But it breaks every time I load up an animation that has Reaper in it. It just can't find his clothes. I don't know why it is. But by going in here and doing file, external data, find missing files, and then going back to like the home folder for all my Blender animations, and then just letting Blender do its thing, it finds all the images again and can reconnect them and be like, oh, that's where they were, okay. This happens every single time I load up a animation with Reaper in it. But yeah. But just to show where we last left off, so right now I have the image textures added to this rig. And you saw before, this view where it doesn't have the image textures, it could play just fine. And then go into here, look at how many frames drop. So instead of doing it at 24 FPS, it's now at 18 FPS. And then if we wanted to lag it out even more, we go in here and we do rendering it with the lighting, and it drops an extra frame, sometimes double, and goes down to 16. So it's really important to know your computer's limitations in knowing, like, okay, this is only gonna work with this. And this is just with Eevee. If you want to see what happens with cycles... Ooh, hang on. I got a phone call. Give me a second, stream. I'm going to start barking at the next congressman that tries to call me to tell me to vote for them. That is a threat. Anyways, God, I hate political season in this fucking country. I hate it. Anyways, back to Blender, sillies. Yeah, it's important to know your hardware's limitations. So if you wanted to look and see what Cycles does, so if I go into here and I go into rendered mode, what Cycles does is it sort of maps out the lighting. It maps out the lighting differently. I'm not going to go into too depth of an explanation because I don't want to give any wrong information. But you'll notice that there's going to be so many more artifacts as it tries to load, and if I try to play this, it's all over the fucking place because of trying its best to render in the way Cycles does. And if I were working on this animation, like I hadn't finished yet, and I was trying to view the lighting, it'd be a lot easier just to render out these, like, 100 or so frames, view it in the rendered mode, and then, play back that way than it would be to... yeah. There's also another view, called Workbench, which, it's just this non-material view, but it's also really good for mapping out, animations and figuring out like what works best. This is another way of viewing that like at your max frame rate kind of deal. I think our music stopped. Oh, that means that I gotta finish up soon. Oh god. Um, last minute things. Last minute things. What other cool things can I show off really quick? Um, Squinting. Oh, if you are a coder, if you're a programmer and you want to do things with Blender, it has Python support. You can type in Python code. I am not gonna show that because good lord, is it? It's a thing. I do use it though for ripping shaders and that sort of thing, for adding shaders to these Destiny rigs. There is a like a Blender file that you use to convert stuff around. What else? What else? What else? What else? If you were rendering an image, you could go into here, mess around with the image and composting and stuff like that that way. I usually use Photoshop because I have Photoshop, so I'm gonna use Photoshop. What else? I think that covers a lot of the basics, at least the stuff that I am most familiar with. There are so many resources out there. There are so many resources out there. Let me put on some music again. There we go. So if ever you want to learn how to use Blender, and you are looking at all this stuff and you're like, oh god, there's so much, the best thing I can tell you is pick a project and learn from there. Let's say, like, I want to make a character. Okay, well, there's a million and one different character tutorials. There are plenty of pre-made rigs that you can use as a base, like as a launching point. I got my start with Blender learning off of animation rigs, like pre-made Minecraft animation rigs. And I was like learning how to get familiar with it because I was only using like Miku Miku Dance at the time. Funny enough, there are plugins for like everything in Blender, I'm pretty sure. Like I found a plugin that can import Miku Miku Dance models, so that way I can mess around with Miku Miku Dance in Blender. It just depends on like what you're interested in. There are so many things. If you just want to do animation, you can just do that. If you want to do 2D animation, there are tools for that. And what's really nice is that Blender, the base program of Blender, is 100% free. Which is why I love it so much. It's so nice. For it being a free program, it is stupidly good. There are lots of plugins that do cost money, but they almost always are made by really talented and really passionate people that know their shit. And the Blender community as a whole is generally very helpful. Just make sure that, like, if ever you have trouble, like, make sure your versions match up because there are so many versions of Blender. The donut tutorial, as I mentioned before, is always a good spot to launch off of as well. There are tutorials galore. It just kind of depends on what you are most interested in. You know, if you aren't sure, it never hurts to just make a scene. Like, put a bunch of shapes together, make something look looks nice, and be like, oh, well, this is neat, and see how you like it from there. And then, if you want to go a little bit more complex, maybe look into like particles or physics or sculpting, and go from there to just figure out what kinds of things you like to do. But yeah, that I think covers a lot of the basics. I might do more of these in the future if, like, I go up on Tumblr later and see my inbox is full of people being like, how do you do this thing? Or people commenting on the stream being like, what is this? How to do thing? I might make more tutorials depending on what people are interested. But yeah, I think that does it. And we're gonna still here for the night. Thank you for the people who stopped by. And I will see you later.
Bye.